I think I must just do the most honorable thing and say my name is Pasaka Letsatsi, the spokesperson for the South African Social Security Agency. Let me take this opportunity and introduce the panel here. On the other side, on the far right, it's Mr. Fanisi Tocha, is our General Manager, Grants Administration. Next to Mr. Fanisi Tocha, we have the Executive Manager, Ms. Raphahle Ramokgopa. And then we have here the into confidence for us to what has been making noise for the past weeks or so, the matter of reviews grants having to come forward and perhaps make present what we call the proof of life. Without further waste of time, colleagues, let me call the Chief Executive Officer of SASSA, Mr. Themba Matlou.
Our people, South Africa. It gives me a great pleasure and privilege to address the media and social grant beneficiaries in the middle of a payment of social grants to beneficiaries. The agency has noted recently with the concerns and the public outcry and confusion. We appreciate the importance of social grants to millions of Southerners and wish to take this opportunity to clarify the situation. Section 14, subsection 5 of Social Assistance Act requires beneficiaries to notify SASSA of any material change in their circumstances, including as soon as reasonably possible. This obligation is also stated in the approval if in April 2025, the South African Social Security Agency announced its plan for reviews during the 2025-26 financial year. These are targeted reviews to ascertain the grant. It is also important to clarify that SASSA conducts regular reviews as required by Regulation 30 of Social Assistance Act. Reviews are essential to ensure that every person receiving a social grant remains eligible based on current circumstances. This is a legal obligation designed to safeguard the integrity of social assistance program and to ensure that public are directed to those who need the most. Beneficiaries are notified when their grants are due for review and we encourage full cooperation to avoid any disruptions. SASSA will or halted. All approved grants remain valid and payments continue to be processed. Any beneficiary with an active and valid grant remain entitled to receive their payment. This year, we have only introduced and implement what we call a fourth payment date to our payment schedule, where beneficiary targeted for a review are paid on the fourth day. This will ensure that they receive their payment after the necessary review without prejudicing the general payment cycle for others. We believe the strategy is better than the previous rounds where beneficiaries who do not receive their notification only found out that they have been placed on review when they get suspended, at which time it's too late to have their payment for the month reinstated. Those beneficiaries who have not received a notification and are getting their payment on the normal days, you do not have to contact SASSA, only those who received notification. SASSA is also aware of the complaints that beneficiaries are struggling with access to SASSA offices. During the month of June, We have not seen many. However, these numbers have increased significantly in the month of July. We are constantly monitoring the numbers, and we are ready to adjust our plans accordingly to ensure that it remains within our capacity. I must importantly mention beneficiaries who may no longer qualify due to circumstances in their existence, ensuring that grants are not paid out to deceased individuals or those who have relocated without updating their records with SASSA. More importantly, this allows SASSA to detect and prevent cases where individuals continue to receive grants despite being listed on the payroll systems of other entities, could be private or public. This has been done to safeguard the integrity of social assistance system, to ensure that only eligible beneficiaries receive support, preventing fraud and misuse of public funds. SASSA is undertaking the social grant review process for the better good of the government fiscus, thus ensuring that grants are paid to eligible beneficiaries and all fraudulent elements are rooted out. Process also assists us SASSA to have updated personal information of our beneficiaries just when we want to communicate with the beneficiaries. We do not find them because some of the information have been changed. Strengthen its partnership with other institutions such as credit bureau in the country. And this information is recorded with credit bureau, which we now have access to. I must also emphasize that Social Assistance Act and its regulations places an obligation on the part of the beneficiary as a legal requirement to fully disclose all sources of income during their initial application, and as well as other personal details. Beneficiaries are also obliged to inform the agency of the changes of their financial circumstances after their applications have approved. A beneficiary may have qualified and approved for a grant at the time who fail to comply with this piece of legislation. There's a possible risk that the grants may be suspended. Continued non-compliance may lead to the permanent lapsing of the grant. Beneficiaries are therefore advised that SASSA is also empowered by this act to recoup this important information. From the previous years, we have noticed that many beneficiaries do not receive the notices them to come changed, but yet did not inform the agency. We are working on strengthening our communication approach, including through more robust community level engagement, increased visibility of information on our officials and public platforms. We will also increase the operating hours, employ additional capacity to address the long queues that have been the review process by introducing the self-service option. We are finalizing the implementation of biometric identification infrastructure to enhance safety and integrity in the grant administration process. While we are mandated by the Act to review social grants, we are also operating in a space where we have to adhere to the National Treasury's recent budget allocation conditions. In February 2025, National Treasury issued SASSA with a preliminary allocation letter for 2025 MTEF period. National Treasury, in their allocation letter, contained compliance framework with strict conditions, which the agency need to put in place since they become binding and form part of the approved budget allocation for 2025 financial year. These conditions directed SASSA to find a mechanism to save cost through review process to ensure that the integrity of social assistance program. They cover critical such as the income verification, who qualify directed at the genuinely needed. For more information, you can contact our call center number 0800 60 10 11. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was the CEO of SASSA, Mr. Themba Matlou. I'm now going to very close to me. Cloni Zuniko. Okay. Let me take this thread, then I'll go to Cape Town. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Pasika. This question is to the CEO, but Themba, sort of going to talk about news. When we talk about beneficiaries that are eligible, we've got some beneficiaries who, for example, would receive maybe 2,000 Rand, 3,000 Rand from family members every now and then. Are they in trouble in terms of not actually coming forward to say, I may not be consistent every month? Do you see that as a source of income?
Okay. Cloni.
CEO, I talk about not wanting to leave any of the beneficiaries confused, but just in terms of this verification process, it does seem that there is still confusion because there are people who say that they have been verified, but they're still not receiving, and there's just confusion around that, and also that they've gone to verify, but that their information was then not verified, and they were still told that they are offline. So there does still seem to be a lot of confusion. We also place a lot of emphasis on the beneficiaries themselves in terms of what needs to be done, but very little talking about the role that the SASA, the entity, plays, and also your staff as well. We've seen some interesting behavior from some officials where they send people away and people are standing in lines for a long time. Yes, SASA means user management and that people are served when they should be.
Good morning, it's Nico Mhlaba from Newsroom Africa. I just want to get a sense of, in terms of the fraudulent incidents SASSA has picked up over the months. Can you share more details in terms of how many people from within the institution have been identified and what steps have been taken? But also the issue of collaborating with credit companies. What forms of agreements are there in place? And then to add on what my colleague from Kaya talked about, if you've got a Tandega somewhere in Detroit who has a child with a Zuniko, and Zuniko is supporting that child on a monthly basis, how much is that a form of income from the requirements SASSA has in place? It's an annual or it's a monthly income that comes through for the child, but for the mother, not the mother. So how does that fit in terms of the broader context and requirements of an income that is likely going to reflect through the bank account of the mother? Thank you.
Oh, you'll be the first one.
Good morning. I am Oratile Mashilo from the Citizen newspaper. I want to know how many people were flagged for the review, and of those, how many were removed from the list of grant recipients, and on average, how many people are paid a month on this fourth payment date?
Thank you very much, CEO. I suggest we respond and then we'll open for our colleagues in Cape Town.
Thank you once again, colleagues. I will then try to give clarity in some of the questions, and my colleagues will also come in. So, fellow, SASSA, we pay two types of grant. There's normal grant and also, remember the recent, we used to call it COVID grant, which is, we call it a social relief. And with the normal grant, normally, especially on the CSG, Children Support Grant, it is the primary caregiver who normally applies, the parent. And so the means test will be against the primary caregiver, will not be against the child. So the 2,000 that the child will get, the child will only be able to get that if he apply for social relief of distress. Because on the social relief of distress, that's when, in terms of the verification, we'll verify through the banks the income checks, whether there's consistent money that comes through the bank. So that application will happen when we deal with the SRT grant. But on the normal grant, it's mainly the primary caregiver we means test. The others we don't means test. My team will add on that your question. Hloni? Yeah, Hloni, we'll have to some of the information we'll definitely investigate, because what we do normally a month when we push the payment batches, we pay everybody. We pay everybody. That's why we say that we just introduce the fourth day as a review, as one of the days that we need to review, and those people must come forward. We have not experienced a situation where someone has been verified and not be paid. I think we are very easy to get the contact of this beneficiary so that we investigate what actually happens. But normally when we verify the people, and if the person no longer qualify in terms of the legislation that I've read, will definitely suspend the grant. But at this stage, there hasn't been any that we've suspended. So some of the cases we just need to check what could have transpired. That's why we even release those payment, even if we have flagged those people that were supposed for reviews. But even after they have not came forward, we because the law doesn't allow us to suspend immediately, so we had to release the money, and then they got the money. The only delay that you picked up, it's when people went on the normal days. Yet we have already communicated that for those ones that are flagged, that are targeted for review, because the indication is that they have some form of employment. And if they have some form of employment, it means they do have money. So we only introduce additional day of payment so that it's a strategy to pull them to come in and at least review them. So we can at least, if they ask those individuals, we can follow each individual case and check what actually transpired. Yes, I think I've already indicated on how we should manage the queues. We did understood that a lot of beneficiaries come forward to SASSA offices, and some of the beneficiaries that come are the ones that did not necessarily receive the notification, but because of panic, they then have to come in. But we have since adjusted our business processes, including reassigning some additional officials just to focus on the review project. And then we also we're bringing in additional people as to the hotspot offices where we think we should manage the queue. But importantly, as I indicated here, we're working around the clock to activate the self-application platform, where we want our beneficiaries just to review their information on the click of the button without them walking to the SASSA offices. Yeah, I think you will have seen, as Brenton come forward to me, you will have seen that in the last statement that we have issued, we flagged about 210,000. That's the data that we have received, where they actually, it's important that we need to review them, because it has reflected that they could be working and they could be having extra income. So those are the numbers out of the 19 million. We pay 19 million beneficiaries, and we pay them every month without any disturbance. We just had to look at this segment that we need to call them for review. Yeah, I think Brenton, we can add. Thank you.
Thanks, CEO, and good morning, everyone. So I think one of the key questions that was asked is how is income that is generally regarded as maintenance treated? I think three journalists asked that question. So it's the same. So as I think what CEO mentioned, it's important that the social grants aren't treated the same as SRD. We don't just check bank accounts based on what is in your bank account, make a decision whether you qualify or not. With the grants, you would go through a process. So whether it's at the point of application, you'd bring in 3 months bank statements, and you'd sit down with someone and you'd work through every item on that bank account statement to determine, and the beneficiary will tell you, this money comes from this person, this comes from this source, this comes from that source. And at the end of the day, the beneficiary then signs an affidavit with all those statements saying this is what the income is for. Now, in terms of the social assistance regulations, maintenance is considered as income. But the beneficiary will be able to tell you based on their 3-month statements, you'll be able to see the regularity of that. And you can then say, well, okay, because the grants are assessed on an annual income. So whatever you take the 3-month statements and you extrapolate and then you agree with the beneficiary, this is how much you would receive for maintenance for a period of a year. On the question around the child, if the beneficiary says, well, this is maintenance I'm getting from the mother or the father of the child, for the purpose of the child, that would then go into assessing the child support grant that the beneficiary may also be receiving. So the grandmother could be receiving a child support grant, but if the mother is supporting or the father supporting the child, giving the money to the granny, that money would be considered in the application for the child support grant, but not for the application of the older person's grant if the granny applied for the older person's grant as well, unless obviously she states in an affidavit that she's also receiving regular maintenance support from her children. But again, it's a process where you sit down with your grant administrator and you work through your bank statements, you record everything, and you write an affidavit saying what the money is for, and then the basis of that you will then be assessed on whether you qualify. It's also important to note that qualifying criteria, especially for the older person's grants, is quite high. It's over 7,000 rands a month. So if you're getting 2,000 or 3,000 rands support from your children, it's unlikely that you will be disqualified purely on the basis of support, unless obviously you've got other income, such as a pension fund, etc., that's also contributing to your income. I think that is most of the questions. Leo, we did mention, maybe just to also mention, CEO mentioned we've got data for about 210,000, but we haven't put everyone on review. So we're also scheduling the reviews we're doing. So we'll spread that out over the course of the year. It's a little bit too early. We just started with it, sending out the first rounds in June. We're still analyzing the data to see how many people have actually come forward. We probably have by the end of July be able to put out better statistics in terms of how many people have come forward from the first group of people that we've put on review, and how many have been based on the reviews, how many grants continue, how many grants were cancelled, and so forth. But as you also mentioned, we haven't suspended anybody as yet. But if clients do not come forward within a certain designated period, which is defined in the social assistance legislation, after we've notified them that they need to come forward for a review, then they would be suspended on the basis that they've not come forward for the review, and not necessarily on the basis of whether they qualify. So the terms in the Social Assistance Act is to say, if you've been notified to do a review and you don't come forward within a certain period to do a review, then SASSA must suspend you until such time that you do the review. But at present, we've not passed those thresholds yet, and nobody has been suspended. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Brenton. Tagalang, can we get the questions online? Oh, thank you very much. CEO and Brenton, you were very clear. I see Zuniko is itching to include. Yeah, I'll take you. You'll be the first. You want the second bite? Okay. Tony and Zuniko, you still want the second bite? Oh, okay. No, that's fine. You'll be the first one. Or should I jump you? Okay.
Okay. I just want to clarify something with Brenton, that is the cap for this source of income 7,000 rand? For example, if a grandmother is receiving a grant on a monthly basis and maybe they sell fat cakes at school, if they receive anything below 7,000 rand, would they be safe in terms of the grant on a monthly basis?
Okay. Shadi?
Um, okay. Also, maybe just to follow up on Tulu's question, in terms of the employment, I think maybe this is to the CEO, maybe Brenton, the employment that you're picking up, what is this form? Are you able to say what this form of employment that you say you're picking up is from these from the people? What are the amounts of monies involved, if you can possibly go into that detail? Because at the moment it seems a little bit vague that this has happened. There are some of these people, we're getting that we've come to SASA to verify, but this is still going on. So again, there just seems to be a lot of confusion around this. Um, and then maybe also, again, on the staffing issue, does SASA have capacity to implement this review? Because it does seem that possibly not. And then the other thing is, just in terms of the SASA 11 that were, or the SASA 8 plus 3 that were arrested over the ID fraud. Do we expect, can we get an update just in terms of that investigation, where that is? I know they were Joburg based, but is there possibly more arrests to be made? Just an update on that, please.
Okay. Zuligo? I just wanted to check, what's the worst that can happen to someone who's not come forward, being late, or if I don't show up, I don't come forward to declare that, well, the financial situation has changed? Is the worst the fact that you will just suspend and not take any criminal action against me? That's the first question. The second question is, there's this idea about self-service initiative to ensure that you fast track or you make the application more convenient. But in terms of those people who are currently receiving this SASSA grant, they are very limited in terms of data connectivity, in terms of technology, in terms of the cost of the data, and also the issue of biometrics. How is it going to work practically, especially for the people who are currently receiving this grant, in terms of their limitations to technology and data and connectivity? Thank you.
Maybe I'll have to start with it. So you got it. Okay. I think Brenton will pick up the two. The first one, I think, but Cloney, with the recent case, it's still with law. It's now with law enforcement. You may have seen that, especially the recent one in Gauteng, bail was granted to some of the officials, but we have suspended them from the service while we are currently following the labor relation process, and also the law enforcement is busy finalizing its own process. Quite various cases, of course, across the country. They are in different law enforcement, Ejutwa as well, and Limpopo as well. There are those that already have been convicted, but I can provide the stats later in terms of how many provinces that happened. And whether SASSA has the capacity to run a review process, like I indicated in our act, that SASSA has to do review process. The only difficulty, sorry, the only different now, it is because that we, as working with National Treasury, we realized that we needed to step up the review process frequently, as opposed to how we used to do it. Annually, we must review every grant. So now we had to work with other institutions to pick up the people that we think we need to review them, and working with National Treasury to say every quarter we need to have a report of how many people we have reviewed. So that in a sense then elevated and a lot of work for SASSA, which we indicated that we are looking at our plans, we are adjusting our plans, getting additional staffing capacity to assist with this project. You'll remember even during the card replacement, is a project that we did not plan. It was run by Postbank, but we had to come in and bring in additional capacity so that our people can still be served with dignity. So that's precisely what we're going to do. Look, the worst that is going to happen, the worst that can happen, Brenton I think has mentioned as well, that if the section 14 is very clear that beneficiaries must be, if their financial circumstance changes, they need to notify SASSA, and we also have the responsibility to review all the grants. Our law requires that we must inform beneficiaries for 3 months. If the beneficiary doesn't come forward, of course, we'll have to lapse the grant, we'll have to suspend the grant, because it could be that some of them are either potential fraudulent cases, some of them, they really don't deserve to get it. As you know, that South Africa still needs to benefit from the very same fiscus that we are having. So that is the worst that will happen, as it clarified, that after 3 months, we'll keep reminding the beneficiaries to come. So that's what can happen. The issue of the biometric, like I say, I've missed it a bit, but we and the self-service platform, the service platform, it will help our people because we are busy. Remember, on the SRD application, we've already built an online application system. So already there's a verification that happens, especially people who don't have data, who stays in different areas. But we've made sure that 2 things happen. We have deployed the self kiosk in some of our offices so that they just walk in and assist themselves there. And then there's also a self verification that happens there through their cell phones when they take their picture and their ID matched against Home Affairs. So those are some of the things that we're doing. So we're also working with the community leaders in instances where, especially councillors, in instances where there's a deep rural areas, and this person wants to apply, but they don't have data, they don't have everything. Our leadership assists them to do that. Over and above that, we have this outreach community that we do, community engagement, which we call it ICROP. We normally visit these areas. We've got a plan that we visit all these rural areas to make sure that we bring services to the people. So my colleagues, I think, can add on what I haven't really captured. Thank you very much.
Okay, so firstly, let me apologize. I made a mistake when I quoted the older person's means test and said 7,000. My colleague corrected me. It's 8,990. So it's almost 9,000. So it's quite a high threshold for the old age grant. The issue around income or work and employment, I hear what you're saying, it's vague, but you can also imagine there's an infinite number of scenarios that can happen. So it's not a case of we can tell you what are the jobs that people. The key thing here is a beneficiary came to us, said, I don't have income. And then they went somewhere else and they said to that person, because they wanted to buy a product or a service or get a loan, I am employed and I have income. And now we have a mismatch and we're just trying to resolve the mismatch. The beneficiary has to come forward and tell us, well, what is this income or what is this employment you told this other person about? Maybe you still qualify because, like you said, those thresholds for us are quite high, but maybe you don't. And so that is what we're trying to do is iron those types of issues out. CEO addressed the issue around capacity. Just to mention the reviews that we've scheduled for this year. So we've mentioned some numbers, but we're looking overall, and we haven't yet put all of them in the system. We're looking overall at putting about 300,000 reviews, and that's more or less within our capacity. That's about 15% of our capacity. And as CEO mentioned, we do reviews every single year. It's not a new thing that we're doing. It's something that we do build in. But the difficult thing is it's managing the month to month to make sure we don't get 1 month. For example, in June, we didn't have too many people coming in, except in KZN and some 1 or 2 offices in the Free State. And then July, we were swamped. So we have to then rebalance to say, okay, let's slow down for August. Let's make sure everyone's first cleared out of the system and had an opportunity to do the reviews before we schedule any further reviews, and maybe then pick up the pace again, but later. So again, it is a little bit dynamic. It depends when people do eventually come in. And one often finds that people will come in on the last month when they're about to be suspended, which is also why we introduced the 4th payment cycle, because often people only find out that they've been scheduled for a review when the grant is suspended, which is then too late because that month your grant was suspended. We can't reinstate you. Whereas what we're trying to do is with the 4th payment cycle is that everyone who's on that, it should send an alert or signal to them that there's something wrong with their grant. They should contact the SASSA office and find out what they need to do. And we were hoping that that would bring in more numbers earlier so that we don't then get the sort of bottlenecks that get created in the system. And obviously, we're still evaluating that and seeing how, if it's working, if it's not working, what else can we do to try and communicate to beneficiaries to try and get the process a little bit more smooth, as opposed to the sort of creating congestion. With self-service, I think it's important to also note we're not targeting the most vulnerable beneficiaries for review purposes. We're targeting those who we suspect have income or some other kind of sources, and those are generally your beneficiaries who may have access to technology and that. So hopefully, and we're not also saying you must use that portal system. We're just making it available so that if you don't want to come into a SASSA office, you have your self-help portals available to you to be able to use it. But the SASSA office will always still be there. I know CEO won't like that, but my preference is to have the one-on-one, because here you're dealing with complicated. So we're not dealing with the beneficiary has a very straightforward economic history. You're dealing with someone that has sources of income, or even sometimes multiple sources of income. So it does help a little bit when you're sitting with someone and you're asking the questions, what is this on your income state or on your bank statement? What is this? What is that? And you get them to sign an affidavit saying what everything is. The self-help services could be a little bit more challenging because you're not dealing with the person dealing with someone in person. So you'll get someone assessing whatever you submit and then sending you an email back saying, please answer this question, that question, that question. And then if the person doesn't answer, it hangs for a while. But yes, that are options we want to provide to people, because obviously the less people that come through our doors, the less congestion there is. Also noting we have to provide normal new application services as well, and we don't want to cause a disruption in the new grants application processes because too many people are coming in for reviews. I think that's it, Paseka.
Thanks, Brenton and CO, Pasle and Fanny. Colleagues, I think we have come to, brainwave. Okay, let me open for you, colleagues. I'm generous today, it's Monday.
When I was speaking to SASSA beneficiaries last week, they mentioned that the money they received apart from SASSA was either from their children or their stock for working women's. And the first question is, do you see these as a source of income? The second question, should they start receiving these payments, or what should they do now? Now we have another question from Bonising Yati from NAB. There's still no method of payment for new Quad 7s approved since October 2024. When will SASSA finalize the new payment method? The second question. Please could DSD and SASSA explain what, in the government's view, the difference is between a suspension and a momentary for those who don't have money or food for now?
Is that all?
That's all.
Okay. Okay.
So the two questions that have been asked by the colleague on the Sowetan side, one was, do you see this as sources of income, specifically monies that would have been sent through from family members to social grants beneficiaries? I think perhaps maybe it's quite critical for us to just go back to what the CEO has indicated. We've got two groups of services, one being the SRD 350 service. Now, the difference with this SRD 350 service is that this test for SRD 3 service is a single and it's set to 624 rands. And we're testing an individual. So by implication, it means for service, any monies that you get, we therefore, it becomes a suspect potential for any income. But when coming to the normal social grants, unfortunately, with normal social grants, we've got varying thresholds. There is income thresholds limitations for people that are married. There is income thresholds for people that are not married, but they are individuals, they're singles. And we have income thresholds for grants specific. So meaning somebody who's receiving a child support grant and somebody who's receiving old age grants, they don't have the same income thresholds. The same applies to the assets thresholds. You've got people that are not working, that are having more than 1, 2, 3 properties. The question is, as part of the disclosure, we want to know, you need to tell us if you have 3, 4 properties, which of the 3 or 4 properties are you staying in? So we single out one. So if you are staying in this one, tell us what's happening with the other properties that you are not staying in. Are you generating income? How are you paying for municipal rates and taxes? So there is an entire regime in this particular instance. So in a nutshell, for normal social grants, what we are encouraging is we're encouraging people to disclose. So it's not about how much money is in that particular account. We want them to disclose so that we can test if whatever what they've disclosed will allow them, 1, to receive the full value of a grant, 2, whether it will allow them to receive a partial amount. So I think that's very critical. So generally what we are seeing is people do not want to come forward to disclose their income in earnest because maybe there is 50,000 rent in an account or 100,000 rent in an account. It's not about what is the balance that we have in account. We want to see whether there's income flows, and those income flows, they're the ones that we want to be able to test them. Because the fact that a person could be receiving 5,000 rand, we do more than just looking at 5,000 rand and consuming it as your income. For normal social grants, there's also elements that are referred to as permissible deductions. So meaning, if you are receiving 5,000 rands, as Brenton has outlined, that the income threshold is sitting at 8,900. So if you are receiving 5,000 rands, we still have to consider what we term permissible deductions. In other words, out of that particular amount, we need to take out what legislation permits as permissible deductions, so that the value that we're going to be taking into account, it will be not 5,000 rand, but a lesser amount. The second question that you have raised is whether there is a payment regime which we have put in place for the clients that are getting social grants using alternative identification. You refer them as Quad 7s. What we're asking any of those clientele, if they are out there listening, we asking them to go and show themselves at SASSA offices, because with them we have made biometrics to be mandatory. It was deliberate that we somehow held back the ability for us to be able to pay them, because we have identified a few risks that were associated with them. We want them to be able to go forward and show and go present themselves, because we want to capture their biometrics. Secondly, there is a consent document that we want them to be able to sign. Other than that, we should be able to start helping them to get their money. I think if things goes right, we have a planned testing session tomorrow to be able to test our capability, and they should be starting to receive their money, specifically those that don't have the cards, because majority of them they already have cards. So we are aware that just around 8,000 can be able to go access their money. It's only a small number that do not have cards that we want them to come forward, and we should be able to start having their monies paid. Thank you.
We are still going to have one-on-one with the CEO, Hloni. You are itching.
Yeah, because the one question about what's the difference between the suspension and a temporary.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I think I just would also like clarity on that, because as much as we are saying they haven't been suspended and we ask them to come, they're not coming forward. We still have people in the lines that are coming forward that are still experiencing issues. What SASSA believes is happening and what people on the ground are saying is happening.
You read our mind. Brenton was going to deal with it.
Okay, so what we've done in this financial year is we introduced a fourth payment day into our cycle. So you might know that previously we've had payments spread over 3 days for our social grants, and then we have our COVID SRD grant, which we pay at the end of the month. So normally around the second, we pay the older person's grant, the third would be the disability grant, the fifth would be the child support grant, and then we introduce the fourth date, which would be roughly around the 8th, depending how the days in the month fall, which would be for people that are on review. And then at the end of the month, we have 5 payment days that we pay the COVID SRD grant. So this is just a change in our payment schedule. And the idea there was for us to be able to signal to clients who are on review that if you're getting paid on this fourth day, that you are on review and you should contact the SASSA office. That was coupled by an extensive communication campaign. So it's not a delayed payment. It's just an amendment to the payment schedules. You're not suspended. You're still getting your grant paid in the month that it's due. It's just that you're not getting, so if you were an older person getting paid on the 2nd, you'd be paid on the 8th, or a child support beneficiary, if you were getting paid on the 5th or the 6th, depending on what day of the month payment day fall, you'd also then be paid a few days later on the 4th payment day. So that's the 4th payment day. No one's been suspended, everyone's being paid. It's just as additional form of communication to people that there's something wrong with their grant. Come into a SASSA office and clarify. As mentioned earlier on, we did send out the bulk SMSs, but we also know people's details with us are not always up to date. So many people might not be getting those bulk SMSs. So this was a way for us to send out some form of communication or some kind of a signal to clients to say there's something wrong with your account, come in, so that you can address that issue. A suspension would mean your grant for that month would not be paid, and your grant will continue not to be paid until such time that you conduct a review and you are convinced that you still qualify, and you'd be issued a new rating that you still qualify, and then your grant will be reinstated. So you could lose your grant for a month or 2 months. If you still qualify, you will get backdated, pay if paid, but because it's suspended, it means you're taken out of the payments. Taken out of the payment cycle. You're not being paid until such a time that your eligibility is confirmed. So that's the key difference. Yeah, people are just being paid a little bit later than what the normally would have been paid, but they're still being paid in the month that the grant is due. I almost want to hesitate calling it a mini suspension because it's not a mini suspension. It's just a change in the payment date for your grant, but you're getting paid. And the key thing is, while you in that period, do come to a SASSA office, do make sure you conduct that review, because at some point in the future, you will, if you don't do the review, you will go into suspension. And once you're in suspension, we have to then, only after the review is completed, you will then have your grant reinstated if you still qualify. I hope that makes sense to the, okay, she's happy.
So we together, Hloni, people are getting paid. Colleagues, thank you very much. We have come to the end of the briefing. We'll have one-on-one if you still want to engage with the CEO and colleagues here. Once again, thank you very much.